landfill operators are developing new technologies to make facilities even more efficient and safe. And I'll just give you one quick example. They have come up with a way to use GPS at landfills to figure out how to compact the material better to get more stuff in the airspace. This is an emerging thing that like the better landfills are aware of, and there are some smaller landfills that are just getting on board with this. But it used to be you could only put a certain kind of garbage in a cube. Well, now with GPS, you can apparently fit 10 to 15% more garbage in that cube if you know where that cube is. GPS helps you do that. There are also much been advances in odor control, which, as you might imagine, could be an issue with certain landfills. But landfills where they're operating aren't just repositories of solid waste. Your typical landfill is on a several hundred-acre piece of property. It's a large property. But the landfill itself is only on one portion of that property. The rest of that property is often used for wetlands, parkland, open space, and they also, by the way, make a contribution to the local community. And there are some counties in the United States where 20 to 30% of their annual revenue is because they host the landfill. In New Hampshire, I mentioned the University of New Hampshire as a recipient of landfill gas. The landfill that they get their gas from not only runs a landfill, the biggest one in New England. They have a dog park there, they have hiking trails, and they have a homeless shelter. Okay. Landfills are not just about garbage. There's a lot more stuff going on in them. And in fact, in Texas, I was reading, they're going to be putting solar panels at the landfill on an old closed section of the site to generate solar energy for the first time at a landfill. We're also beginning to be more innovative with regards to vehicles that are used to collect the garbage. I think you've probably seen your share of old diesel trucks with black soot coming out of the back of the truck. Those trucks are going away and being replaced by innovative alternative vehicles that are fueled by natural gas, biodiesel, and hybrid technologies. They're coming up with ways, diesel electric is something that people are looking at in the heavy truck industry, where you actually can take there's some energy stored in the braking system and then be used to power the truck as opposed to just relying on diesel. Several thousand trucks in the United States are now powered by alternative fuels, and that number is growing every year. And to their credit, New York City Department of Sanitation has truly been a leader in this area with a large fleet of alternative vehicles. But while that's going on, you're seeing new federal regulations. And federal regulations that were enacted 8 years ago put deadlines of 2007 and 2010 for reducing the amount of particulate matter that come out of a truck, which is already passed. And you've seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of particulate matter as a result of that. And next year, the amount of NOx emissions, nitrous oxide emissions, is going to go down by a very large number because of those EPA rules. At the same time that that is happening, there's been a conversion to what's called ultra-low sulfur diesel, so you see diesel emissions reduced as well. So even the traditional diesel trucks don't have the same carbon footprint or negative impact on the environment as they once did. And I truly believe that we're at a tipping point nationally with regards to environmentalism and being green. And part of that is the response to Hurricane Katrina and the increased understanding that there's some connection between our personal everyday activities and global climate change, and the federal climate change legislation in Washington, the new EPA regulations. There's been regional climate change programs going on for the past 6 or 7 years. RGGI is the one that New York State is part of, and state laws. These things are all spurring increases in recycling, increases in landfill gas recovery, and further reductions in emissions. The LEED building standards are changing the way people do construction materials. Once the building is built, what happens to all the leftover construction material? I just bring it to the customer. Well, you want to be a LEED certified building, you can't do that. And so the LEED certification process, which many employers or building owners find valuable, is yet another motivator to get people to be thinking in different terms about the waste heat generated. The federal stimulus package that passed Congress was signed by President Obama a few months ago included a bundle of money for retrofitting existing garbage trucks with diesel particulate filters. These things are ways to capture the emissions that come out of the diesel trucks. So some companies won't have to go out and spend $250,000 for a new garbage truck. I'll say that again. $250,000 to buy a garbage truck. Instead, they buy a $4,000 diesel particulate filter with some of that money paid for by the stimulus package. Now let's talk about New York City, since I assume many of you really want to know, well, okay, that's good, David. Nationally, that's the picture of what's happening here in the city. So let me talk about the city. New York City is the most prolific generator of solid waste in the United States, by far. New York City residents and businesses generate north of 20,000 tons of garbage every single day. Coming up with a precise number in this area is tough. It might be 22,000, it might be 23,000. It changes from year to year. It's like to say it's 20,000 plus. Either way, it's a lot of trash. About 30% of it is recycled. That's a little below the national average. It reflects the fact that New York City has a lot of apartment buildings, and so it's difficult to do recycling in apartment buildings because people don't have the space to hold that stuff for a week, or for whatever period of time they do, as people who have single-family houses do. The Department of Sanitation has a fleet of 2,000 trucks, and they collect all the residential garbage in the city, the white garbage trucks, I'm sure you've seen them. The private sector industry, the people who I represent, pick up the garbage from all the businesses in the city. And so there's this interesting ballet that happens because the Department of Sanitation does most of their collection during the day. And carters do a lot of their collection at night because traffic is lighter and it makes it easier for them to get to the businesses. And also it's easier to collect garbage when the business isn't open because the containers are back in the building. And so those are the two sources of solid waste. In solid waste, I want to include as a subject recyclables because both the Department of Sanitation and carters handle recycling. And it's about 50-50. Department of Sanitation collects 12,000 tons per day. Private carters collect 10 to 11,000 tons per day. Because of the recession, there's been a decrease in the volume of material generated in New York City in 2008. And the Department of Sanitation is scratching its head trying to figure out why that is. It's the economy's stupid, but they want to analyze it. They want to hire a consultant. So what happens to all this plumbable trash? Well, for a long time it was disposed of at fresh kills on Staten Island or at other landfills located in the outer boroughs. And this was typical of what was happening in most of the United States. Solid waste was generated locally and disposed of locally. It was a municipal dump somewhere. People would bring the material there. And what happened in the 80s is that when the federal law changed, there was starting to see the closure of these landfills all over the United States. There used to be 9,000 landfills in the United States as recently as 1990. Now there's less than 2,000. The reason for that is that the small municipal landfills didn't satisfy the EPA regulations. And so you saw a lot of these places start to close, including in New York City. So as the city's landfills closed, or in the case of fresh kills, we're not exactly what we call popular. Anybody here live on Staten Island? You know what I'm talking about when I say popular? Thank you. Good. There was.
It's the largest garbage dump in North America. Guinness Book of World Records.
That's true. It was the largest garbage dump in America. At one point, it handled close to 18,000 tons a day. And in 2001, it closed finally. And what had happened in the interim in the 90s was that the private sector, the people I represent, began to build these facilities called transfer stations to handle the material that could no longer go directly to a landfill. And so you had transfer stations start to open, and then when Fresh Kills closed in 2001, the city began to export all of its waste out of the city by either truck or rail. But as you might imagine, transfer stations are not the most popular businesses to have as your neighbor. The garbage goes there. That's strike one. There are trucks that bring the garbage there. That's strike two. There are trucks that take the garbage out of there. That's often strike three. And so there's always been a lot of opposition to these facilities. And so as a result, Mayor Bloomberg, after a bit of political horse trading and whatnot, developed and pushed through the city council what's called the Solid Waste Management Plan, which has the best acronym that I know. It's called SWAMP. You can't make stuff up. It's a SWAMP. But the SWAMP is very important and gives us a blueprint for how New York City is going to handle solid waste and recyclables in the future. There's three really important components to that. The city is going to resurrect 4 shuttered marine transfer stations. These are transfer stations that take material by truck, but will ship it out by barge. Those facilities are going to be on the North Shore of Queens, about 2,000 feet from LaGuardia Airport. You might have read in the press over the last few weeks some questions whether or not putting a garbage facility near the runway of LaGuardia in the wake of the U.S. Air incident earlier this year is the smartest thing. This is going to be one on the Upper East Side on East 91st Street. It may not surprise you to hear that the nice rich people on the Upper East Side are not exactly thrilled with that concept. And then 2 in Brooklyn, one in Southwest Brooklyn, and the residents there are unhappy because it's going to involve dredging. And then one on Hamilton Avenue in Brooklyn, which is not far from here. Those 4